Alright, so in this problem, I have x to the power of x to the power of 4 is equal to 64. So to solve this, I'm going to first start by taking the power of 4 on both sides. So now I have x to the power of x to the power of 4 to the power of 4 is equal to 64 to the power of 4. Now, if I have something in the form a to the power of m to the power of n, this is the same thing as a to the power of n to the power of m. So in this case, x to the power of x to the power of 4 to the power of 4. I can think of x to the power of 4 as m and 4 as n. So if I replace those, if I switch those two, I get x to the power of 4 to the power of x to the power of 4 is equal to 64 to the power of 4. And now 64 here, I can rewrite as 8 squared. So now I have x to the power of 4 to the power of x to the power of 4 is equal to 8 squared to the power of 4. And 8 squared to the power of 4, that's the same thing as 8 to the power of 2 times 4, which is 8 to the power of 8. So I have x to the power of 4 to the power of x to the power of 4 is equal to 8 to the power of 8. And this means that x to the power of 4 is equal to 8. And x is equal to the fourth root of 8. So this is my answer. Alright, so in this problem, I have 4 to the power of x plus 4 to the power of x plus 4 to the power of x is equal to 1. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor out 4 to the power of x. So now I have 4 to the power of x times 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 1. Now, if I simplify what's in the parentheses here, I get 4. So now I have 4 to the power of x times 4 is equal to 1. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply these two. So 4 here, this is the same thing as 4 to the power of 1. If I have something in the form a to the power of m times a to the power of n, this is equal to a to the power of m plus n. So in this case, 4 to the power of x times 4 to the power of 1, that's going to equal 4 to the power of x plus 1. And this is equal to 1. So now 1 here, this is the same thing as 4 to the power of 0. So now I have 4 to the power of x plus 1 is equal to 4 to the power of 0. And if I have something in the form a to the power of m is equal to a to the power of n, this means that m is equal to n. So in this case, x plus 1 here is equal to 0. Meaning x is equal to -1. Now, another method we could have done here is, as you see here, we have 4 to the power of x right here, we have 4 to the power of x times 4 is equal to 1. So, what we could have done instead here is divide both sides by 4. So now, I have 4 to the power of x is equal to 1/4, which is the same thing as 4 to the power of -1. So now, remember, if something is in the form a to the power of m is equal to a to the power of n, that means that this is equal to this, meaning x is equal to -1. Alright, so in this problem, I have 3 to the power of x plus 3 to the power of x plus 3 to the power of x is equal to 9 to the power of x. So I'm going to first start by factoring out 3 to the power of x. So I have 3 to the power of x times 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 9 to the power of x. Now, if I simplify what's in the parentheses, I get 3 to the power of x times 3 is equal to 9 to the power of x. Now, 9 here is the same thing as 3 squared. So now I have 3 to the power of x times 3 is equal to 3 squared to the power of x. And if I have something in the form a to the power of m to the power of n, this is the same thing as a to the power of m times n. And m and n, well, I can change the place of these two. So this is the same thing as a to the power of n times m. So if a to the power of m to the power of n is equal to a to the power of m times n, then a to the power of n times m, that should equal a to the power of n to the power of m. So 3 to the power of 2 to the power of x, I can switch the places of 2 and x. So now that's the same thing as 3 to the power of x times 3 is equal to 3 to the power of x to the power of 2. Now I'm going to let 3 to the power of x equal to the variable t. So now I have 3t is equal to t squared. Now if I subtract 3t on both sides, I get t squared minus 3t is equal to 0. Now if I factor out t, I get t times t minus 3 is equal to 0. So I have two equations now. I have t equals 0, and I have t minus 3 is equal to 0. T equals 0 is already a solution for t. T minus 3 equals 0, meaning t is equal to 3. So now remember how we set 3 to the power of x equal to t. So I have two equations. 3 to the power of x is equal to 0, and 3 to the power of x is equal to 3. So for 3 to the power of x equals 0, well, you can't take the power of a number and make it equal to 0. Nothing to the power of anything is equal to 0. Now 3 to the power of x equals 3, well, 3 to the power of 1 equals 3. So x is equal to 1, and this is my answer.